This recording is to cover the three main features of Excelerator for Sage 200. They are two-way integration, validation and error trapping, and customization. I'll start off by opening up the Excel sheet, and I'll open up a specific file, a nominal journal template. I'll come back to these templates and how to design them and lay them out a little later on. For now, we're just going to use the nominal journal. I'm going to go into Excelerator as a Microsoft Excel add-in, and I'm going to go to the Excelerator ribbon, and I'm going to click Login. And this logs me into Sage 200. Accelerator does not consume a Sage 200 user. I have Sage 200 open here in the background. I don't need to have it open, it's just useful to have it open as part of my presentation, as it shows the information moved between the Excel sheet and Sage. I start by keying in a journal, and I'll save a journal to Sage 200. So I'll type in a title, I'll give it a date, and I'll just select two nominal codes. And again, I'll come back to how we can browse and search the Sage data from your spreadsheet in a little while. For now, I just need to select two nominal codes. I give it a debit amount, and I give it a credit amount. And before I click Save to Sage, I'm actually going to pop into Sage 200, and I'll open up the nominal ledger in an area known as Held Journals. And you can see at the moment there are no items to display. So if I go back to my Excel sheet, I go to my nominal journals and I click Save to Sage. It saves the data off into Sage 200. So when I flick back into my Sage 200 and open up the Held Journals, you'll see there's a journal, not enough hours in the day. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is the idea of two-way integration and how we can pull information from Sage down onto the spreadsheet. So I'm going to start by clearing the spreadsheet, and I'm going to key in another journal. I come down to the journal date, and I do a right click and I select browse, and it opens up a calendar for me, and I can select a specific date in the calendar, and it drops it onto the spreadsheet. If I come over to the journal type and I do a right click and browse, I can select the different types of journal. The last journal was the whole journal, so this time I'm going to select post. If I go to the posting options and I do a right click and browse, it allows me to select the different posting options. If I come down to the VAT codes and I do a right click and browse, it allows me to select the different VAT codes. These are the VAT codes specific to the company I'm in at the moment, and it's live integration to the Sage data. So at this stage I'm going to select some nominal codes. I'll show you some of the flexibility when it comes to selecting data. So the way Excelerator works is that I can select multiple nominal codes at the one time. They just drop into a box down here. And I can group the nominal codes together if I use the Shift key. And I can select the group. Or I can search for a specific nominal code. Again, there's a search box up here in the top right hand corner where I can type in a nominal code, and it finds all nominal codes that match that criteria. I can just as easily search by nominal account name by just typing in the text, and I can use the arrow keys rather than the mouse to make my selection. And as you see, it drops the nominal codes into the box here, so that when I'm ready to go, I click OK, and it drops them back onto the spreadsheet. So what I've covered there is this idea of saving the data to Sage and recalling or looking up Sage data and dropping it back onto the spreadsheet. So talk very briefly about Excel and what features we have available in Excel. And here I have an Excel function, for example, to sum up my debit amounts. I have another Excel function to sum up my credit amounts, and I have an Excel function for the difference between the two. And here in my narrative I have another Excel function and it's pulling the journal title followed by the month and the year from the transaction date. So if I change the transaction date to June, my narrative gets updated. If I come to my debit amount and I type in £10 and £20, and I can use another Excel feature, the autofill, so I can drag the information down. I can use auto sum, so if I go to my home and I click on auto sum, I can auto sum my transactions. So I can use Excel features to help me prepare the journal and to automate some of the data entry. So what I'd like to move on to now is this idea of validating, or how we can enforce the Sage business rules. And in order to illustrate that, I'm going to key in 2 incorrect nominal codes. And I'm going to go to my Excelerator, and I'm going to go to the nominal journal panel, and next to the save button I have a validate, and when I click validate, it checks the spreadsheet for me, and it opens a panel here on the right hand side, and this panel lists all the errors that have been encountered. It gives me the row where the error occurred, and it gives me a description of what the error is. I can also quickly jump to the error by clicking here on the left hand side. It takes me to where the error occurred on the sheet, and this is particularly useful if I have a large data sheet or quite a number of rows. So once I get to the row I need to correct, I can just type in the information. I don't have to search for it. Or I have another feature here called the fast entry, and this can be toggled on and off, so it's on at the moment. So I go to my next error, and I can search for a nominal code by just typing in, for example, bank space CH, and when I tab off the field, it opens up a search box for me with those characters in there, and I can quickly select my nominal code and drop it back into the spreadsheet. I close down my validation panel, and I close and I check validate again, and it comes back and tells me that there are no errors on the sheet right now. So now I'm in a position to save the data off the Sage. So I go to NL Journals and I click Save to Sage. And it assigns a journal number, and it drops the journal number back onto the spreadsheet. And this is particularly useful if I wanted to print a copy of my journal, or indeed if I wanted to copy a spreadsheet. There's a feature in Excel where you can save the spreadsheet as you click on Save to Sage. And what quite a number of our customers would do is they would have comments to the side, which would be useful when it comes to the audit, and the auditor comes back on a specific journal. I've seen people go so far as to embed emails onto the spreadsheet to have all the information available for the auditors. So I can now quickly pop back into my Sage 200. I'll first just copy the journal number, pop back into my Sage 200, and I'll come down here to the transaction audit trail. In the transaction audit trail, I'll paste in my journal number, click search, and here's the journal I've just prepared. Next up, I want to talk about the designer and how we can lay out the Excel sheet or map the Excel sheet to your Sage data. So I'll open up a blank sheet, and I'll come up here to my nominal journals panel, and I select the designer, and the designer opens a panel here on the right hand side, and it gives me a list of all the fields that are available when I'm keying in a journal in Sage 200. So I go to my sheet and I click where I want my first field to appear, and I say I want the journal reference, and then I want the title, and then I want the date. And you notice that some of the fields here are mandatory or are red. That means that they're mandatory and they have to be on the template. The other fields, it's your choice whether they appear on the template or not. So I've now filled out my header. I come down to the journal details and I say how many rows I'd like to have on my spreadsheet, and I'll select the nominal account, the nominal cost center, the nominal department. I select my debit amount, I select my credit amount, and it drops them back onto the spreadsheet. And at this stage I can close down my designer because I've now laid out my template to suit me. And if I come into the spreadsheet and I search on the journal type, I can select the type of journal. If I go to the posting options and I do a right click and browse, I can select the different posting options. These labels, by the way, I can overtype them. They're only suggested labels. So I'll come down to the journal nominal code and I do a right click and browse, and at this stage I can select my different nominal codes here from within the spreadsheet. Very quickly, one other feature that we have in here is this idea that we can download a posted or an unposted journal. So if I come into a download posted journal, for example, it'll open a box for me and I can key in a journal number or search for my journal. And once I select the journal, it'll drop it back onto the spreadsheet, and this is particularly useful if I wanted to reverse the journal I had posted in error. So I guess those are the three main features of Excelerator. The idea that it can do two-way integration. It can push the information from Excel into Sage and pull the information from Sage down onto the spreadsheet. It's got validation and error trapping, so it enforces the Sage business rules. And it's got customization or mapping, which allows you to design the Excel sheet to suit your needs.